Namaste. I am Niranjan Banik. Today I am going to interview Mr. Dilip Dutta and Mrs. Sukti Dutta for Foundation for India Studies, Houston, for the Indo-American Oral History project being done in partnership with the Houston Public Library and Houston Community College. This is a joint relationship between the Houston Foundation for India Studies and Houston Community College. Well, Mr. Dutta, shall we start then?
Oh yeah, let's start.
You came to the USA in early 70s, actually.
Yes, I came here, I arrived in May 1970 in New York Kennedy Airport. And I have been picked up by a friend of mine who was here before me. And my first stoppage in this country was in his apartment.
At what age did you come?
I think I was 33 at that time.
And you started in New York and spent several years, I believe.
No. I stayed in New York for 7 days only.
7 days, okay.
Only 7 days with my friends, and practically I was lucky. In this respect, I would say something of the first wave of practically first wave of Indian immigrants in U.S. I would make some notes if you don't mind.
Before you do that, can we go back where you come from, which part of India,
Of course,
subcontinent you were born on?
Of course.
When you were
I was born in Calcutta in 1937, June 1937. And I had most of my education in Calcutta. I was a graduate of Jadavpur University. And then I worked for a company called Breathwet India Limited, which had a head office in London, actually Birmingham. So I worked there. I joined there as an engineering apprentice, and then I moved and got employed and worked for them for quite a bit of time until 1970. So that's the one company I worked in India, and after coming to US.
Would you like to say something about your early boyhood, what kind of conditions you had in India at that time?
Yes. When I was in 1937, India got independence in 1947. Prior to the independence, there was a lot of turmoil, and as you know, practically our generation definitely experienced that. That is the independence movement by Mahatma Gandhi. And by the way, I was fortunate enough to see Mahatma Gandhi in Calcutta when he was there in '46 when there was a riot, communal riot. He was there to stop it and plead both the parties to stop bloodshed, come together and be peaceful. So at that time, even as a little boy, with my elder cousin, I went there.
You personally met him?
Not personally, cannot meet. It's a huge gathering. So I just saw him, you know.
From a distance?
He was lecturing from a platform, so that's what I was fortunate about that. And that is a ugly period of time in India. I don't think I'd like to elaborate on that. Everybody knows that history, and a lot of histories will be available for people to read that. Then after my graduation, I joined Breathwet. Graduation, what I mean is after I graduated.
You had a PS degree?
No. That's what I'm just to clarify. I was graduated from the, not graduated, I should say.
Jadavpur.
The word graduated come from this country. Everything is you graduated. So after my intermediate science, I joined that company, Braithwaite, as an engineering apprentice. And for 4 years apprenticeship, I got a diploma. Then I joined night school in Jadavpur University for graduate degree. So I worked, I studied 4 years in Jadavpur University and finally got my BE degree. And I worked there. And, then I went in 68, 69 period. We found out that the U.S. is giving engineering people, especially engineering candidates, a non-preference visa. By that, what I understood is that they're offering immigration to the Indian engineers to come over to this country, and actually that is not expected at that time. However, they offered it. So how I found out, and one of my friends told me, so I went to embassy, actually not embassy, yeah, U.S. embassy, and they explained to me why they need and what, the formalities I have to fill in so that I can get a visa. And I went through, and in 6 months, there's a visa in my hand, and I left.
I thought that you were pretty happy with the company.
And Braithwaite, yes, I was pretty happy.
What prompted you to come?
Pretty happy and not happy, both. Happy with the company management, but the situation at that time was such that the labor movement is so tense that one day I was get out. You know what get out means? They confine the people, don't let go the officers out of the out of the shop and the office premises, and I had that. So that I got, how can I work here? Really the company, the British company, and when it was handed over, it was a beautiful company, very, very well paid company. But at the same time, this labor movement came in late 60s, it started, okay, and 70 was worst. And you all know the Naxal movement and other things. You're aware of that. But anyway, so that is why I left. I left, and since I got the opportunity to come over, I left.
So you came to New York, spent 7 days, and then came to Philadelphia.
That's right.
Could you elaborate a little bit how you spent your time and how were the conditions?
Okay, I had a friend known from Calcutta. He picked me up. So my stay, my coming to U.S. was not any hardship in a sense, I would say. Considering this situation at that time here for the new immigrants. The new immigrants from India at that time was all 99% engineers. Prior to that, there were the people who used to come as all postdoctoral fellows, and mainly in biochemistry field. So they used to work in universities, etc. But they didn't have the immigration. They are just postdoc, some kind of visa. I don't recall what that is. But this first wave of engineering immigrants, those who came here, they had very, very hard time. They couldn't get a job in their field. They had to work in restaurants. They had to work in some guard duty, and stayed in Clinton Arms. There was a hotel, which is actually in our term is a mess building. So that had a lot of people lived there,
Very harsh conditions.
Yeah, in the worst condition. And then then we were thinking, why then so many engineering immigrants are brought into this country? So finally we realized in 72, 71, and 72 practically, I would say early 72, then I realized at one time there were several nuclear power plant projects surfaced. So that's when our friends, our fellow immigrants got jobs. And they scattered all over the United States, from New York, from the port of entry was New York, mainly. Somebody came to West Coast, but most of them are from New York. So then they spread out all over United States.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your entry into the industry here?
Yeah, what I had, I already mentioned that I didn't have as much hardship as others. Okay, so I came here, and before I came here, since I used to work for the British company, I used to get ENR, the Engineering News Record Journal. So in that journal, I saw an ad from a company in Philadelphia. So I wrote a letter to them. So they, wrote me back that if you come here, then we will talk about it. Talk about an employment or anything, not before that. So that was not an employment letter, but a hope. So when I came here, on the second day, I called them. There was a telephone number, I called. And they said, okay, well, come in here and we'll talk about it. So that's how I just spent 7 days of vacation in New York, and then I took a Greyhound bus down to Philadelphia, and fortunately, again, I had my maternal uncle's friend living there as a postdoc for biochemist. He was a biochemical scientist, working for University of Penn. So that's why he received me, and I had very little trouble.
So from that time on, you lived in Philadelphia area?
Yeah, for 7 years.
Continued for how long?
Yeah, 7 years. 1977 I moved to Houston.
So is there anything else you would like to mention?
Well, I would mention a little bit of my Philadelphian life, how I did it, and what social work I did. So the moment some immigrants or whatever, whoever of one ethnic background or whatever comes into a place, they want to have an identity among themselves. And they want to have community of themselves, because they are people of same thoughts, same likings. So that's, even with all the hardship, first thing we needed to do to form a what do you call, a club or an institution, so that everybody can get together and express or practice their own cultural likings, to their likings. So we formed a club first thing. So without an institution and association, nobody comes in. So we formed an institution that is known as, still is in existence, called Pragati. It's still in existence. Then whenever you have a common, all Indians, what they do a cultural program. So we had the first cultural program of Tagore-based Varsha Mongol. So we did that. So that's how we get together, and people, whatever talents they had, a little bit, not very, as much as you see nowadays in U.S. And they are very talented people, dancer, singer, etc. Those were not there at that time.
So that was after you got married and brought Mrs.
No, we started before I got married, the Prabhuti, etc.
Okay.
Then after I got married, then with my wife, I went to India and bought made a Durga Pratima and brought it with in Philadelphia as our luggage. So I was in charge of that institution at that time, that club. So that's my something I did, and something I used to like here. There also.
Eventually you came to Houston. That was in 77 or something.
Then in 77, East Coast is very highly taxed area. So whatever you get state tax, city tax, federal tax, a lot of tax. Then all of a sudden there was an advertisement in the paper from a company in Houston. That company's name at that time was Pullman Kellogg. So Pullman Kellogg advertisement. So I went to the hotel for interview and I got selected, and then they moved me. And those days, they moved me, so completely with the airfare and everything. But we drove. So, and that office at that time was at Greenway Plaza. Pullman Kellogg, and across the office there was a hotel. I forgot the name of the hotel. Big PL3 or Big something like that. So I moved to Houston.
Did you know anybody in Houston at that time?
No, I didn't know anybody in Houston at that time. But I was well treated by Pullman Kellogg, and then, within a few days I came to know so many people. And I joined Houston organizations. There are two organizations for the Bengalis. Then there is another organization, if I remember right, the other one was Gujarati Samaj. So I could think of three. And the fourth one was the Meenakshi Temple. I think they are active from 1980, not before that. I don't recall before that, but anyway. So obviously I joined that cultural organizations. The name of the cultural organization is Tagore Society of Houston. And by the way, there is a Tagore statue in Houston. And, it is in the Briar Forest area. A full figure Tagore statue, bronze statue installed.
That was last year.
Last year, yeah. Anyway, so I joined there and started doing all kinds of cultural programs, showing movies, puja, etc.
So tell us a little bit about the conditions in Houston, away from the Bengali culture.
Okay. The Houston at that time was not that crowded. The population was not that high. So most of the time the jobs were available for engineers. Brown and Root started that nuclear plant, so there were a lot of engineers moved in Houston. And there was no tax. It's a very good living for Houstonians compared to East Coast. So that's my, I didn't see any problem or any trouble at that time living in
terms of racial overtones?
This is something, a subject is very, I wouldn't say anything about, I don't like to say that in detail, but there was at that time Indian engineers were not treated according to their merits, okay, which you won't find in my understanding, because I still work for the company for only 6 years ago. So later on, what I saw, that thing gone away. gone away, almost gone away, I would not say. Nowadays, nobody, I don't see any, actually in the engineering field, I can say there is not that many discriminations or anything at this time. Okay, first, I know why, because when I came here, people used to think our education standard is not as good as U.S. education standard. That the myth people had, local people had, that restrained them to give us some opportunities to move out there. I believe that's what it is. The people need to know who I am and what my background is, and it takes time. So as a group, it takes longer. So that's what happened. Now I see some young engineers are holding good positions nowadays. All right? But at our time, we were always said, we need some pencil pusher. We don't want any supervisor. We don't want any test. This kind of word I used to hear.
Was there any language barrier? May not be in your case, but did you see among your friends?
Yes, yeah, there was language barrier plus accent. Some accent. They're not really skilled, but gradually it's overcome.
How about your family? How does your family take it? Like Mrs. Dutta, and eventually.
I think she took it well, and she liked it. My wife liked it, I think.
One thing I want to add. When we came here, we have 2-3 family we knew. We forgot that.
And they were helpful. I mean, you could go visit
Yeah,
them.
we used to go to their house and enjoy. Ashok Ghosh and Nivedita, Deepak Dutta, Ranjit Chandra and Bulla.
That's good. Having some known people.
Yeah, we had.
So,
Then we got a lot of friends because we are very socially active. That's whether it's good or bad, we are very much socially active. So therefore, we got a lot of friends. Later
So,
on,
tell us about-
every weekend we got busy.
Tell us about your children. You have 2 good sons. Where were they born? I mean, one was in...
One is in Houston, Philadelphia. My eldest was name is Orko Dutta. Orko born in Philadelphia. Marco, his nickname, actual name is Omorto. Omorto born here in Houston. My eldest, the Orko, is now he's the vice president of a biofuel company. His office is somewhere in downtown. And my second son he's an MBA, but he works for Dover Industries, I think, the last time.
It's a big industry.
Yeah, so that's the Woodland office. He's in the accounting field. So my eldest son has one son and one daughter named Arab and
Jaina.
Jaina.
That's good. So, did you experience any issues while raising them, raising your 2
Raising
sons?
my sons.
2 sons.
I wouldn't say no.
Not really.
Not really, but I personally feel what happened in the meantime, I would say one thing. You asked me, and I sometimes have to go back if I remember later. One time I had a situation. This engineering companies is ups and downs. You have job, no job, you get out. No job, next day also it's 1 week's pay, you go. So that situation happened one time, and at that time Pullman Kellogg was brought by Wheeler-Brothers Fry. So they laid off 500 people at one time, one day. Everything is a mess. And I got lucky, I didn't get let. But at the same time, the next day I was called and told me, go to Indonesia. I said, Indonesia, I have a little, two little kids, how can I go? He said, if you don't go, you don't have a job. So, you see, whether you say discrimination or you say they had to do it because they have no choice. So I went to Indonesia, and she got sick, and that made me come back early. So what's happened? Sometimes you see if you go to expat, there's an expat community. It builds. Then there is everybody's friend, whether it's from England, like in our case, I had from people from London office, people from Houston office, people from Mexican office, something like that. So we all together work. We dine together. We had the same hotel. So anyway, so the project director at that time, I told my wife is sick. What can I do? He said, go. So that's how I escaped continuing in Indonesia after a year, of course. So I could come back.
Did you take your children to Indonesia? No.
There is another thing. I had another very good assignment in Caracas, Venezuela. That's where my children could go, okay? Because that's an open offer. They have an expat. You can go to the international school, you can study there, and that's a lot of people did that. But my sons did not want to go any other place than that north we used to live, and there is a Klein district. He said they will not leave Klein High School. My goodness. Yeah, that's the best school in the whole world for them. And we were so, so loving in a sense, you may say, to our children that we did not force. See here, we did not force our son to be anything. Whatever they want to be, they are there.
So, how did you make sure that they could stay in the Indian religious communities, not biased by the American culture? Did you oppose to any kind of Americanization?
No. We made sure that our children are very, free to choose whatever they want to choose. This is the way we brought them up. And they are but they didn't disappoint us. They stayed in the community. My eldest son was the chairman of the Council of Trustees for Durgabari. Okay, so he worked 4 years for them, for the institution. My son was in the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. My eldest son, Orko, he went there in 2000 or 2002 or I forgot, 2002. 2002, he was in there. He faced Regis. Regis, appreciated his voice. He said, "You have a golden voice." If you happen to see that thing, you will see that how Regis was so excited with his voice. My son has a very good voice.
Yeah,
he's a brilliant voice, and he can act.
Sing.
Sing. He acted that you may remember the Poet and Prophet.
right.
Poet and Prophet.
Yeah,
By
marvelous.
it's a wonderful rendering by what's that name of that institution?
Oh, the theatre company?
Uh-huh. Anyway,
Shunya.
Shunya staged that. Yeah, have you heard of Shunya? I don't know.
Yeah, I went there today.
You went there, okay. Oh, that's enough for my voice. Let's go ahead.
So, I hear that your elder son also married within the Indian community.
Yes, he married, she is, our daughter-in-law is from Punjab. Actually, she is from London, I wouldn't say. But she was born in London, and, she's Punjabi origin, actually. Then she is a very, very good girl. We liked him, and she bought a house across our house, to
That's
be
nice.
close to us. She is a chartered accountant.
So they have 2 children now.
Yeah. She has two
Ah.
children, one son, one daughter.
Okay. And you never had to worry about interracial marriage because you did not think that.
Not really, not really. It's their choice. If they choose and if there anything goes wrong, they suffer. Why should I get on their way and be unhappy for nothing? It's their life. And their life, they should live their way.
But sometimes parents do advise them channelizing their life in some way.
Yeah, some, but we don't. We are very open.
So you mentioned about your son's involvement in the Durgabari Society, but you yourself were very much involved also.
Yeah,
So
up to the inauguration of that institution, I was there. 6 years, I was continuously working.
Tell us a bit
Till
about
2000 September, it was inaugurated. After that, I said, now others should do it. I am not, I have a very, you may say good or bad, I don't know. I don't want to cling to anything. I don't want to influence. I do my job, and after that, it's somebody else. Let them do whatever way they want to run that institution. It's there. But after 2000 September, I was strict, and I worked very hard to get that started. At that time, nobody could make me bend anyway. So, in public work, there will be a lot of, resistance, different opinions, all kinds of things. I have to steer through all this.
Tell us a little bit about the objectives of the HDBS. I mean, how.
We call it, one thing I would say, we call it Durga Bai, which is a residence of Ma Durga. We said residence of Ma Durga. That's why our temple, which we call temple, is not actually a real Hindu temple structure which we see in India, which has a garbhagriha, and then the deity is in that small, and the priest worships. And our concept is everybody participates in it. Okay? So when the priest chants, we like everybody to hear it. So our concept of that is a body concept, is a home concept. So therefore you will not see small little rooms. It's all open, and all the deities are on the one side, and people can gather all over, surrounding the deity, and listening to the priest's mantras, rather than Purohit does the puja all by himself, which is the tradition in India. But here, everybody listens. Everybody circles around. That's our concept. Plus, we have to have the cultural thing going. So we have an auditorium, we have a school and another building. So they can practice literature, there is a library, and still something more to be done, which is not being done yet. And I don't interfere and I don't say anything, which is a good children park, which is not yet to be built. Okay. And we thought of a good field, soccer field or something, which is not done yet properly, so that nobody plays there, or indoor games, or swimming pool, or table tennis court, etc. is not being built there. Still we have 3-acre land remaining. But the main problem is also parking. We cannot have it. Totally is a 6-acre land. So 3-acre we already built.
Tell us briefly about HDB's his contribution or how he participates in the greater Houston community's life, in the food banks?
This is a, yeah, they do feed for food bank, collection of foods, etc. They do. Why I'm saying do they? Because it's somebody, I'm not in any way a policymaker or anything. But as I said, whenever I live and let other people do it. I do not believe it that I want to click to it and I have to give advice. And I feel like others have the same merit and same intelligence as I do, and maybe more than I do. So, so that's a part of it. And here again, I would say, we need to do more. Yeah, there was a scholarship in Stegos, and that's Stegos Society does for Houston, University Houston.
Right.
The Stegos Society is affiliated, some program, and there is a essay competition every year, and they award that, and also they, I think still it's continuing. They send one person from here to Shantiniketan, India, Tagore's University, with a scholarship for a month or 2 months so that they can go there and study that environment.
So do you see any concerns regarding anything in Houston about societies? Do you think that it is going in the right direction in all these changes that you have seen?
Okay, let me say it this way. Okay, you would see now, our generation, those who are 70s immigrants or even early 80s immigrants, they are becoming old. Older generation. Now, by virtue of the internet, what you call revolution or explosion or whatever you call it, by virtue of that, we have many Indian immigrants now, the IT group. So they are younger. They are practically our son's age, age group. So they are here, and all the, I don't know, I'm not aware of other communities, what they are doing, or how those guys are getting involved in the community affairs. I don't know that. But in our community, you will see those IT group young men are now getting involved in. So they are now taking charge of that institution. This year they have elected all the young generation immigrants who came for IT.
You mean for the HDBS executive committee?
Executive committee, everything is new immigrants. So one thing is, I'm not very sure about the other communities, and nowadays I do not converse with, I have a lot of friends in Gujarati Samaj, but I had no conversation with them for the last few years after I retired. But for our community, this is what I'm seeing is that the second generation, let me divide this. Second generations of the immigrants, meaning those of us came here and our children, that's second generation, one group. And the guys who are coming from IT, they're also second generation because they are our son's age, in a sense. Yeah. Maybe 2-3 years plus minus. So they are also second generation. But they get involved in our societal affairs. But our children,
have a different.
different. So they are not getting involved. That, when my son became the chairman of the Durgabari Council of Trustee, I thought he may be able to bring in the second generation to participate. But it didn't happen. Somehow or it didn't happen. I don't know whether the same thing in other Indian community or not.
That's a good question. In fact, would you ever ask the children if they really need any such organization to stay in the Indian cultural fold?
I don't know. That's something maybe we need to work on as a all Indian community, not just sectional like Bengali, Gujarati, Marathi, and all this. We still not able to make it an Indian community yet. That's what my feeling, and I feel bad for it because I am a failure in that respect also. Because I used to get involved in community affairs. That's why I feel bad about it. I didn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I would like to close this up after two more questions, okay, unless you have some additional thoughts. So, you have been in America for a long, long time, almost 40 years in this.
45 years.
So is there any regret? I mean, you could have stayed back in India and served Indian community over there. You did a pretty good job. In your company, you have been at the top of the ladder, I guess, in technology side. But do you feel any regret that have you been in India, you could have done more to the Indian society?
No. Practically no. Because if I had, I would have gone back. See, I am, among my brothers, or sisters, anybody, nobody is here except me. All my brothers are very well-to-do in India. Two are chartered accountants, one is a scientist, one is a engineer. So I could have gone back to them, but I didn't. So I'm quite happy here.
So my second question is, and this is the last question, unless you want to disturb me. How do you envision the future of these next generation of Indians? Do you see a good future for them in the USA, or do you think that they have to?
Second generation, our second generation, I see a good future because they are already most of the Indian children, they are doing very, very good. As much as I know, okay, they are either doctors, scientists, lawyers, because we emphasized on education. Those who have come here, we emphasized a lot on education. There's one thing I would say, somebody may laugh at me. Education is the easiest way to earn a good living. Okay? The word easiest somebody may not like, but it is the easiest way to have a good life. Any other field is very tough. Very, very tough. You can be successful. Like say you go to football player. How many gets into a club? Basketball player. How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands try, but how many? Very few. Okay. Business. How many can do it? How many are successful businessmen? Right?
Do you think that your children are instilling the same principles to their
That I don't know. That I don't know. That I don't know what their principle. But this is what my observation. I don't know. You may differ in my opinion. But see, the business and other things is some kind of different talent you need to be successful.
Okay, with that, we would like to conclude the interview, unless you have some additional thoughts.
I have one thought. I'm thanking the foundations for Indian Studies for giving me the opportunity to speak out, speak my mind and my background, etc. And in my opinion, this is a great venture, and I wish this will be a very successful and the future generation or anybody wants to know something about us, the Indians, they have a good place to go. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your...
Thank you. It was my pleasure to get the opportunity to interview you.